G'day, gents. G'day. Audio level, David Crisafulli with Laura Gerber, testing 1, 2, 3 on International Women's Day. Laura and I will be heading down to the coast very soon to go to a function, so let me know when you're good. For a second day in a row, a whistleblower has revealed the true state of police numbers in Queensland. And here we are at another station, this time at Stafford, following yesterday's announcement of cuts in Ferny Grove. Here it is again. And the numbers tell a terrible tale of a government that hasn't invested in the front line. Since coming to office in 2015, the number of full-time equivalent officers at this station has fallen from 56 to 52. That's a drop of 4 in the middle of a youth crime epidemic. Despite surging population, despite surging crime numbers, there are fewer police on the front line here in Stafford than there were in 8 years ago. That is a government that does not plan, deliver and evaluate. And what's happened in that period? Well, break and enters, stolen cars are up by 2/3, thefts have doubled. And yet there are fewer police on the front line than 8 years ago. The government still hasn't released its workforce data from September, which will tell the true state across the board. But one by one, brave whistleblowers are telling us the tale of woe of their station. Because the men and women who wear blue uniforms behind us need to know that they have colleagues side by side with them to do their job, and they need to know that they have the laws in place to protect the community. Fewer police, weaker laws, and the government wonders why we're in the middle of a youth crime epidemic. Finally, before I hand over to Laura, I just want to make an announcement today. The opposition has been informed that the Auditor-General will shortly be beginning an audit on early intervention programs. This is magnificent news for every Queenslander who's serious about addressing youth crime, both at the start of the journey and at the other end. And we've been very firm on our solutions. Consequences for action, unshackling the judiciary by removing detention as a last resort, but also gold standard early intervention. Having the Auditor-General put the microscope over these programs that are in place gives us an opportunity to deliver gold standard early intervention. We have repeatedly said that if the government is serious about stopping that pipeline of young crims, we need to put a spotlight, shine a light on what is working and what is not, and dealing with the current crop of hardcore repeat offenders and the future pipeline. And any step in that direction will ensure that Queenslanders can again feel safe. Because Queenslanders were repeatedly told that the government, if re-elected, would keep them safe. You're not safe when someone's in a knife in your home and there are less police to come and defend you. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura Gerber, Shadow Assistant Minister for Justice and Youth. I want to commend the Leader of the Opposition for this announcement today. The Auditor-General looking into early intervention programs is a really big step for Queensland. We know that the state government wasn't prepared to do this work. Last year I asked the Youth Justice Minister if she would identify which early intervention programs are working and detail that for Queenslanders, and the state government said that was too labour intensive. So the Auditor-General is doing an independent report, doing that work that needs to be done, work that the state government wasn't prepared to do. And today we're out the front of the Stafford Police Station, and whistleblowers can reveal that there are 4 less frontline police officers today here at this station than what there was when the Palaszczuk Labor government came to power. Now, we know that the Palaszczuk Labor government promised 1,450 new frontline police officers by 2025. And yet, we're seeing cuts at this police station and others around Queensland. I'm going to call it how it is. I do not trust the police minister. I do not trust Mark Ryan when he says police numbers. I do not want to hear any more about approved strength. Queenslanders want to know what is the state of our frontline police officers. This community, the Stafford community, want to know that. These police officers want to know that. They don't trust Mark Ryan when he talks about approved strength. You cannot call an approved strength police officer. You need boots on the ground to protect your community. So I think the police minister needs to front up to this community. He needs to explain what is going on with our police numbers. And then this, of course, is the same police minister who is overseeing our youth justice laws, the implementation of Labor's announcement in relation to our youth justice laws. And we know that the committee process this week has heard from Queenslanders around how they feel like they haven't had their say. They feel like they haven't been heard by the state government, and many Queenslanders have come forward and said that they don't support Labor's youth justice laws. Now, the LNP has a clear plan to fix Labor's weakened youth justice clause, and it entails empowering our judiciary, unshackling the judiciary. Judges and magistrates need to be able to hand down a sentence after considering all the circumstances of the offending, and they can only do that if their hands aren't tied by detention as a last resort. We need to make sure our early intervention programs are at a gold standard. And again, I commend the Leader of the Opposition and the Auditor-General for taking the first step into this. It's a key part of how we prevent youth crime in this state. And finally, we need to make sure we're embedding consequences for action in our youth justice laws. And so lastly, if I might just touch on International Women's Day today. We know that we're celebrating women right across Queensland, but in particular, as the Shadow Assistant Minister for Youth, I'd like to celebrate and acknowledge all our young females throughout Queensland. But I also know there's a lot of work to be done. We know that Queensland has the second largest pay gap nationally when it comes to gender pay equality. Almost 15% pay gap for women in Queensland, as opposed to the national average of around 13%. None of that is good. There is so much more work to be done. We also know that women's workforce participation is not as high as men. So what we need is strong women's economic policies to address the gender pay gap and the workforce issues that women face. And I know that women right now are being asked the question in forums this morning at breakfast and perhaps today at lunch around if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be? And my daughter was learning about International Women's Day at school, and she actually asked me this morning, Mum, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be? And I said to her to know your worth. But as women, we can only do so much to know our worth. We need the state government to step up and have some strong, measurable actions towards knowing our worth when it comes to the gender pay gap. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you.